This episode is sponsored by New Vision Projects, and everybody has heard the horror stories that happen. They have a friend of a friend or a neighbor that's been renovating for years on end, or they've been building a home and it just hasn't gone the way that it needed to go. Budgets are blown through the roof, timelines, forget about them. New Vision Projects has an incredibly strong track record for over 15 years of working with customers, serving them at the highest level. If you are considering building or renovating, check them out on Instagram at New Vision Projects or at newvisionprojects.com. Building the homes you want with the confidence you need. New Vision has you covered. Let them show you why they're different. Back to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the Open Concept Podcast, where we are breaking down unnecessary walls and barriers that stand in the way of greatness. Our boy today from Manhattan, no longer from Kansas City. That was where you were originally from previously, wasn't it? Kansas City. Yep. Now in Manhattan. Awesome. David Forster joining us today. Operations coach and active COO in TOSIG Landscape. They help service-based businesses and owners build decisive teams to win the day. With 2 decades of experience scaling home business companies, as well as what I found out offline, bike shops, which was pretty cool. Retail bike shops, didn't know that. I specialize in extracting some of those decision filters that the owners have in their heads and translating them into simple systems that they can actually use. I am very excited to talk to you today, my friend. David, welcome.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Heck yeah, man. So the transition, we were talking a little bit offline, but Manhattan, very different than Kansas City.
Yeah.
You upped and left. You've been in Manhattan for how long now?
Right at 90 days, I think. And Manhattan, Kansas. Let's clarify that. Not New York,
yes.
Manhattan, Kansas.
Yeah.
The Little Apple.
Little Apple. We'll tell. Yeah, 100%. But awesome. But still, made that transition to somewhere else. We were talking offline. You were working with the landscape company and had an opportunity to jump in as the COO. A COO hat, man, is not an easy hat to wear for a lot of people. I think we were talking a bit about the visionary and just the requirements that a true COO requires, the skills that they need to have in order to harness some of that vision and just actually, make stuff happen. What was walk us through that process, how, your skill set was really gonna help move things forward as the COO in this current position.
Yeah. So Derek is the CEO, built an amazing company over the last 15 years. And he is such an amazing visionary. And I always thought I was fairly visionary. I'm kind of a balance of visionary integrator if you're an EOS minded person. But when I met Derek a few years ago and started, we had a friendship, and then it turned into a client for consulting on some efficiency and operation stuff, and then turned into me. As we were trying to find him a COO, the conversation just kind of took a turn and ended up, it really just makes sense for you to take that seat. And we ended up making that happen. And it's such a unique thing. Like you said, I've never been COO to somebody else as a CEO. And it takes a lot of my focus and my efficiency side to really take the massive movement that he creates when he's, making a wake in everything that he does. He's just moving fast and has big ideas and very good intuition. And so it takes a lot to kind of lasso all that in and evaluate it and pick the things that are going to be the most impactful and cut the things that aren't yet, but do that in a way that doesn't totally squash the fun, right? I know we have a saying that goes around the office that some of us are the fun sponge. We just soak up all the fun and get rid of it. So
there's no time for fun. Fun isn't profitable. Let's get it right out of here.
So that's been the unique side of it is being able to do that and organize, all of his ideas and which ones are the best things to do now and when's the right timing on doing some of these things. And at the same time, it's taken a lot of pressure off of me, because I was generally having to also do a lot of those things, and I still do that inside of SOS of the visionary side and what's the big next step and how to push things forward. And so in that role, it's nice to be able to just focus on where my gift really is, which is in operations and efficiency. So in some ways, it's a challenge, and in some ways, it's like, oh, this is way easier.
How does the process of prioritizing initiatives come into play for you? Like, how do you think about that when you say there's this wake of ideas, and
Right.
ideas are pretty easy to have, but how do you decide which ones to prioritize,
Yeah.
which ones like don't make sense? Maybe they're not an initiative that we need to focus on at all. Maybe they're an initiative we don't need to focus on right now. Like maybe this is
Yeah.
a Q3 or Q4 initiative. But how do you go through processing what's on the board, what we're after, and what's gonna drive the biggest impact?
Yeah, it's really narrowing down to what are the things that move the needle. And sometimes I hate that saying because it's very vague, right? Like, oh, things that move the needle. Like, well, okay, how do I figure that out? Um, and so with a landscape business too, it's a lot of the service businesses can be this way, but in landscaping specifically, it's like running 5 or 6 businesses in one, right? You got for us anyway, we're full service. So we've got mowing, we've got lawn treatments, we've got irrigation, we've got design build, and then within that you've got softscapes and hardscapes, and then we've got our holiday lighting and permanent lighting, and then we've got snow. So like,
That's a lot, man. That's a lot of offerings. That's a
and
big machine, right? Those are a lot of parts, and all
yeah,
require very different systems and very different people to lead and organize them.
yeah, and each one in itself could just be a niche business. So if the idea comes in that we want to start building playgrounds, which it has a couple times, it's like, okay, whoa, let's pump the brakes. Like, where does that go? And is that something that already fits within the skill set of our team? If we can choose to either do twice as many patios and outdoor kitchens this year, or we do the same number of patios and outdoor kitchens, but we also then add in, adding in playground play sets, and we have to learn how to assemble them and what kind of base to put them on and what are the struggles we're going to run into. So we could do that, but we would have to basically like start all over and find all of the pain points and create all new systems around a whole nother business, really. And so it's like, okay, if we're going to put enough energy into something, let's just double the hardscapes.
Mhm.
Like, why don't we just sell, $2 million in landscapes this year instead of one or whatever we were at. Right. So, um,
I think it's a
that's,
pretty
that's my filter.
common. 100%. I think it's a pretty common thing for companies, business owners, entrepreneurs to look at the next thing, right? Like you
Yeah.
you hit a point in your business where you're like, man, we just can't seem to grow it past this point. Probably the next thing is to bolt something else on to help grow. And so you look at your vertical integration, what this looks like in your eyes,
Yeah.
like maybe, in landscape company, maybe it starts out, we're cutting lawns, and then it starts out, we're doing patios. And then it starts out, okay, we're doing, outdoor kitchens, whatever it is. Or if you're, an electrical contractor, it's like, we're just getting in, doing some, replacing light fixtures and some small stuff. And then it gets into, we're doing full home renovations. Then it's like, you know what, we're just doing large scale commercial projects in
Right.
restaurants. But like, you can really do anything. But when you're looking at adding these services on, why in your mind do do people come up with these distractions, or the woman in the red dress
Yeah.
metaphor, right? Like, how do you
Yeah.
define whether or not this is a good idea and it's something that can fit into our current services, or this is really just a distraction? And like you said in the decision that you're making, let's just put this on the back burner and double down on what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
How do you go about making that decision first, to recognizing that this is going to be the strategy that we're going to move forward with? And then how do you relay that strategic decision onto your team?
Yeah. Um, really well said. Thank you. I mean, the way you structured the question that was really well said. The the decision from the beginning, whether it's a woman in the red dress distraction or whether it's something you should really move forward on, also has then another double, like a fork in the road on that as well, is even if it's not now, is it a not ever? And I rarely ever have a not ever. It's usually just not right now. We've already got our plan for the next 1 to 3 years. And the way I decide on that, if it can be in that next 1 to 3 years, is, do we have the tools in the team to do it tomorrow? If we do, then yeah, let's add it in. It doesn't change anything, right? The team, if the skill set of the team can hit it at an optimized and maximum value, we should do it. But if there's another training involved, or we would have to have a specific crew that we break off and start a new thing with, or we have to invest a bunch of money into a type of tools, something like that, then it's like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Maybe we'll put it on, let's look at it and get some information, and maybe it's, next season or the season after. And then if we decide to go with something, that it makes it much easier to roll it out to the team, because they might be excited about something slightly new, but they don't have to do anything new. Like, they're not overwhelmed with, new trainings and new skills they have to learn. And so
It's a fine line. Like, I had this conversation because we're, Q4 is wrapping up here. We're getting close to Christmas at the time that we're recording this. We're thinking about 2026 and what that looks like.
right.
I was having a conversation with one of our senior leadership members here, and this was just a couple of days ago when we were talking about what we're focusing on. We had made a big push last year and over the last sort of 18 months in one direction. And we had decided about a few months ago to scale back. And I was having the very same conversations, and he was asking, well, do you see like a future where we can, tack this on? And is this something that we're going to be looking at? And I said, honestly, could be, but not right now, and not in 2026, not for the next 12 months. I'm not saying it's not a never thing, but it's not a right now thing. And part of that, to mimic what you were saying, the reasons was because we take a look at the staff that we have, the skill set that we have, their zone of genius, what they could do, in their sleep. And this wasn't going to be just a small step for them. It was going to be very different learning, or very different crew, very different opportunities, like very specific people that we were going to have to hire to go after this as an opportunity. And it was almost a very different business that needed to be followed. And looking at the foundation of the business, knowing that, all right, if this is the direction that we're going to be going, then there are some very foundational things that we have to be 110% absolute rock solid on before we go and take this next step, because we're essentially like taking away almost all attention from everything going on over here currently to focus on this. And right now, like, it was just that risk ratio of time spent versus outcome. And it was, if we were getting too distracted, then we would probably lose sight of what's right in front of us right now. And that was a really tough pill to swallow. But once we wrapped our head around why, and all the reasons that you had talked about right now, what can our team handle? How are we going to, make sure that they're set up for success, that they're going to bed at night and they're sleeping okay. They're not stressed out, worrying about what the next thing is going to be happening tomorrow. They just understand that, and giving them that peace of mind and letting them really own their zone of genius to like really maxing them out their capacity before we can take the ceiling off and say, okay, let's really increase your potential here. Let's really move you up. Let's skill you up. Let's train you up. We just need to take a beat. But once that decision was made, it was very clear, very decisive as to why. And I couldn't be more excited about, what we're planning to do in 2026.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I agree with the maximizing and taking the ceiling off, because the other factor is, why would somebody, if they're wanting to bolt on that new thing, is it because they feel like they've maxed out what they have? Right? Like, is your market share completely maxed, or can you still push for more? Is the efficiency of your crew maxed out? Like they're doing the absolute most they can do, and they're the most profitable that they can be, and there's no way to raise prices, and there's no way to like any way increase, right? Like, okay, then yes, let's bolt something else on because we've just completely maxed it out. But like what we're doing right now is we're the scaling phase that we're at is we grew revenue big time over the last couple of years. And now we're realizing like, oh, okay, well, we've got some room to improve on the bottom line on efficiencies. Our man hours are not staying within the budget the way we want them to. Our guys aren't moving as efficiently. Is that because of training? Is that because of tools? What is it? And so I'd rather stay right where we're at for the next, year to 2 years and maximize the skill sets and the efficiencies of the crews and then double or triple our profit versus trying to add on something new just to force revenue that's not going to be any more profitable than what we have because we're still running around like, with our heads cut off trying to figure it out. So,
let me phrase it this way with a bit of a feedback that I get and trends that I typically see is the idea of scaling back, right? You talk about you've hit revenue targets, but now we talk about, okay, we want to get efficient, which in a lot of people's minds means slowing down, doing less. And as the business owner, you are, or as a part of the leadership team, you're like, okay, that kind of means less revenue. That means less top line. And that's really what the banks want to see. That's how I kind of judge things. Are you suggesting that we do less work? What does that mean? Or there's this fear that you're not going to be able, if you're trying to be more efficient, that you're not going to be able to produce the same amount of revenue because maybe you kind of got away with it because you were kind of running off the cuff. It wasn't pretty, but you made it happen. But now we probably won't be able to hit those same revenue targets as we did if we're slowing things down and taking more time and putting into place like a few more systems and adding maybe, a little more friction. We just see those revenue numbers dropping. And I think that's a fear that a lot of people have because they don't know how they got there. They don't really know how they've produced the revenue. But if they look at their gross profit or net profit at the end of the day, it's relatively low. One of the things that I like to look at is like, all right, if we see our gross profit at a certain margin, we see it's low. And this is what I challenge business owners when I'm talking about. Maybe you can voice your opinion on this. But if we increased, if you as your business owner, if you increase your gross profit by say 5%, what would that mean to equate to like that same amount of net profit at the end of the year? If you increase your gross profit, but decreased your revenue, what would that number be? And then it's like, okay, let's maximize the gross profit as much as we can. We know our tolerance to drop top line or balance this out as long as it meets this minimum amount so that we made the same, this year as we did last year, but our profit is increased. It's kind of like those kind of become targets that become very achievable for the teams. And then, but you've increased that efficiency so that following year, all right, we are dialed, we are efficient. We can now tack on more top line revenue and hammer that with the same kind of effectiveness and efficiency as we did when we were at, doing less revenue than we did.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. And what comes to mind as you're talking through that is that I think another part of what scares owners around that is they start thinking about all the things that need to change in order for profit to go, and so they get overwhelmed with like, well, we're going to have to cut this and change that and increase this, and like, it's like, well, just pick like 1 to 3 that like have the biggest leverage, right? So labor is going to be the biggest thing out of all of it. So if you just said, I'm not changing anything else, I am just going to focus on our labor being more efficient. We're not going to change any tools. We're not going to change anything. We're just going to be more focused and more intentional around how we plan and how we structure our job sites so that we could be more efficient with our labor. And if that pulls your 5% up on the gross profit and your revenue doesn't change at all, boom, there you go. Like, but when you start playing with too many levers, right? And you're trying to change, well, we're trying to cut costs on this thing and the overhead, and we're trying to do this. Maybe we just didn't need that project manager, so we're going to cut him out because that'll give us a little more profit to the bottom line. And then we're going to do, we're going to buy a new piece of equipment that's going to make things faster. And like you start moving too many pieces in the puzzle, then it's like, oh, I have no idea what happened. It doesn't seem like it got any better
Well,
because
that's
you
because too, I mean, too many things change. You can't
don't,
really
you can't say if it worked or
contribute
not.
any sort of like success to that because you don't really have any data points because they're so
Right.
different, right? You can't.
Yeah.
It's tough
But we
to
want it
balance it all.
done. We want to figure it out now so we can just be that profitable now and move forward instead of, okay, this year we're going to change this. Or for this quarter, we're going to change this and then see how that impacts it. And then next quarter, we'll change this other thing. And it's like a slow down to speed up. So I don't think your revenue has to change. We're not planning on less revenue. That's for sure. And when I look at the areas that need the efficiencies, say for like our landscape crew, if we have a landscape crew that's producing, 500,000 to 600,000 in gross for the year, and they're at like generally averaging around like 130% on man hours. That's a big man hour swing, right?
Hmm.
And so if I can figure out why, give them better plans, better instructions, and better decision making, so in the field they don't have to slow down and hesitate. If we can even just take that down to 110, they're still over, but they're 20% less. Then there's maybe, that's 20% more production for the year. So there's $100,000 that we just added to that crew, and I didn't have to change anything or cut any. I added revenue so that is going to boost profit as well.
That's a good point. I think you speaking to a lot of people in trades and home service based businesses, or really any business, right? When you're talking about efficiency of your crews, there's you use the understanding of, hey, we've allocated 100 hours but we've produced 130, and like, all right, as soon as we overuse the hours or allowable hours, those aren't billable anymore. That becomes a hit to the company, assuming that you're working on a fixed cost
Package, yeah.
agreement.
Yeah.
um, there's inevitably going to be some pushback from the field that says, well, why didn't you just budget for 130 hours? Why don't you just increase the price? Like, it took this long. We're
Right.
not being inefficient. So why didn't you just charge the customer more? Clearly, it's an estimating issue. It's not an efficiency issue. What would you say? What would you say to
Yeah.
that? Because that is inevitably a conversation that I
Yeah.
hear come up over and over again, talking to so many different business owners.
Yeah. And it's going to be very situational, right? Like if you've got a really young team that is just green, right? And you just know that they are doing inefficiencies, or you've got, a handoff situation where it's just really messy when it goes from designer to project manager to the field. And there's just a lot of back and forth phone calls happening and all that. That makes it easy to identify. But yeah, if things seem pretty smooth and, the crew is like, gosh, we're just really busting it and we just can't go any faster. Um, I mean, you got to dig in a little bit deeper, do a little evaluation of, um, you know, uh, the workflow is going to be where it starts to work its way in. But you're right. And it's very feasible that it is an estimating issue, right? You got to evaluate that too and look at your sales team. Are they scared to match market changes, right? With inflation and cost of living over the last couple of years, that's a real conversation, at least anyway. Um, if your prices aren't matching it, but your materials are going up, and now you're paying your field crews, 20% more than you were a couple of years ago, then that's where it's at right there. You just have to adjust, but I wish there was an easy button on
There isn't an easy button.
it.
If I find one, I'll let you know.
Yeah. Mail it to me.
The decision filters, right? We were
Yeah.
talking a little bit about that. Decision filters. How are decision filters different than SOPs? Right? We're thinking about
Yeah.
the concept
Yep.
of making decisions that may come up that may not be as quick as, hey, just look in the book, look at towards your operating procedure, things come up. But how do you, when you're looking at whether it's on site and guys are looking to make decisions, or new initiatives come through and you're looking at deciding whether or not this is a good fit, or you're looking at clients and whether or not this is a project that you can take on or somebody that you can work with, when there's nothing written and it's a new process that's come up and you haven't really dealt with it before, what is the decision making process or the decision making filters that you typically go through or that you analyze when looking at really saying yes or no, or you have to go or you get to stay?
Yeah.
What does that look like in your world?
So I'll start by saying I even have a decision making SOP.
Okay. So
Because
do
it's
we,
a
by the way. I'll share that afterwards, but I don't want to get off track.
yeah. So SOPs are generally like the stuff that's been figured out and is very processed and very step by step, and can be used for training and for clarification and things like that. Within that, the decision making comes into like, okay, what SOP do we really need to use in this situation, right? And or but we use our 3D decision loop, really similar to the 131, but when you're in field work, it's a little more graspable for the situation. So you diagnose, decide, and direction. You diagnose the problem. What happened? How did it happen? What's going on here? Decide, okay, what do we need to do? What are our options? And what best matches our core values? And then commit to a direction. This is what we're doing, right? And the reason I call it a decision loop is because if you move forward with that and it's not working, you start over. Why didn't you diagnose why that didn't work? Okay, then what were our other options? And we're going to commit to this direction. And that way you can just keep moving forward without stalemate and waiting on an answer from the owner. But the way that that all has to start is like the owner makes fast decisions somewhat because that's their personality and that's who they are. Also because they may have 15, 20 years of experience in the field and they've run into this a couple dozen times. And so they know what works and what doesn't, and they know what questions to ask to move fast. And so I just get our clients, and I'm working with our team right now on refreshing it on get that out of your head and on paper. Like, what are the questions you ask? And they're generally going to be around timeline, customer, and equipment, and or materials. And so it's like, okay, how is this going to affect the timeline? Is it going to impact finish time? Is it big enough that we need to communicate to the customer? And do we have the right equipment and do we have the right materials? Or does something need to change, right? And then you can get into the weeds on what do I have the crew do for the rest of the day while I'm fixing this, or do I have there's a whole bunch of them, right? But in giving your team those questions to look at before they even move forward, they start to think like an owner. They not necessarily they own the business, but they start to think with that expertise and that level of experience because you've just given it to them. And so that's where our decision making SOP comes in.
You mentioned one three
That
one
answer your
rule.
question.
Yeah, I mean that's I've a number of follow up questions, but that was
Sweet.
super clear. The 131 rule that you were referring to earlier, there's a problem. So somebody comes to you, they have a problem, they have three solutions, and then you generally ask them which is their first option, and then usually
Yeah.
that ends up being the solution that you would go with if somebody comes to you with a problem.
Yep.
You mentioned core values, and I think that that's an interesting conversation because people talk about core values, companies talk about core values, and um, for so many businesses that ends up being just words on a paper or a poster on a wall. And how how does your decisions that you make, how do you balance those against your core values, and how much weight do you put against them when you're making those decisions and you're reflecting on, do they follow our values? Do you kind of go through, one by one? Does it meet these expectations? I mean, how much weight do you guys put on your core values?
Big time. If I had a picture I could show you, we have a 12-foot wall in the main conference room. It's in the middle of all the offices at the shop that's vinyl graphic from floor to ceiling that's got all of it written right there. So everybody walks right by it every day. And that stuff can become static, right? It's there and we see it every day. So we forget it's there and nobody talks about it enough. And so I think in the beginning, you do have to go through it one by one in those situations, especially when you're training anybody in any kind of a leadership position. So whether it's just a crew leader or a division manager or a project manager or somebody, at my level stepping in at TOSIG, I'm still really like, not, I want to say memorizing, but yeah, memorizing the core values that were there because I love them. It's Arbor, and I can't list them all out for you right off my tongue right here. But when you're thinking about those decision process, yeah, it's go through one by one and how does this decision affect those? After a while, it becomes culture. It becomes who you are, right? And so you just kind of know. And that's the same thing with the decision process. You need the SOP if you don't know it. But once it's ingrained in your habits of how you make decisions, it's there for reminders. But generally, one of our senior leaders in the field is just going to make decisions the same way Derek does, because that's how we trained him. And so he doesn't need to call Derek, and he can see it and make a decision. And if it's something big, yeah, call. Let's collaborate on it. That doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. That just means putting two heads together is better than one sometimes on big problems. And so working those core values in for us is crucial, because without them, I mean, hey, we just ran into a gas line. Oh, we'll just cover it up. We'll dig next to it. Like that's an extreme example, but like, or
yeah, it happens though, right? It's like it runs through somebody's head. Oh man, this is gonna be a lot of work. I don't really want to tell the owner. I don't really want to tell my boss. I don't really want to.
Are we going to get fined? Like, are we going to have to pay for the gas company to come out here since we broke? Like, oh gosh, what are we going to have to do? We forgot to get it marked. Like, oh, like, uh-oh. And so, yeah, whatever your core values as a company are that's the structure that you build everything around, really.
I agree with you 100%. The core values, like I said, they can't just be a poster on the wall. Like they need to be decision-making factors. So it has to be on, how you can make yes and no decisions quickly. They should be balanced against, who you hire, who you fire, who you promote, the people that you work with, the clients that you take on, the types of projects that you take on, the critical conversations that you may need to have with staff or a business partner or whatever it is. But they do need to be certainly looked at. And if they do become just words on a wall, then that's all they are. And like you said, people will walk by them every day if they aren't instilled in people deep enough, to the point where they can make decisions on their own, guided by those principles.
Yeah.
What's the quickest way to get somebody to, you were talking about, training somebody up in the field there to make decisions the way that somebody experienced would make decisions. What is the quickest way or the best way to get somebody that's green, that doesn't have a lot of experience, to like get them, maybe, you want to move them as quickly as you can into a leadership role. You see some potential in them. They don't have that experience, but you want to push them, but you're kind of nervous. They don't have the skill set. Maybe you don't have all of the time that you need to like sit them through and have them shadow you for, months on end to like go through this long process. Like, no, we need to fast track these guys into these positions to make sure that they are efficient and make sure that they are able to step up in the role. What is the best way to train these guys quickly and methodically into these new leadership roles that you need them to be in order to produce and become assets to the company?
Yeah. Well, I have a thing for that. I have a tool for that. It's just like, I feel like you just set me up, but
real quick before we get back to the show, if you have heard anything on this podcast that has resonated with you, or if it's helped you in any way, appreciate more than anything in the world if you could go hit that subscribe button or leave us a review. It helps us tremendously. I want to go back to being able to continue to serve and do more and more and help out and get bigger and bigger guests on, better and better. The only way that I can do that is with your help. I'm so honored to be here. Let's get back to the show. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. All right.
So, yeah,
it should be an easy one for you then. I'm looking forward to hearing your answer.
So whenever I start working with a new client, I put them through a process that I call it an accelerator. It's a 21-day accelerator process that goes through, and we extract out those questions from the owner. We put that into a list of questions for the team. We have a worksheet that they use for their decision making, and then we have 3 or 4 checklists that they use for different parts of the day. And all of those exist in every company. It's just whether or not it's in the owner's head or whoever the leader is. Like if you're a $20 million company and it may exist in your middle management and it's never been put on paper, but they have these checklists in their head that they visually and all these things they're doing day to day. They just haven't ever put it into an actual like documented process. And so it's a really simple, we don't try to make it complex, but getting those checklists in place so that, and then holding them accountable to it. So it really doesn't take a ton of time and it can happen really fast. It's just holding yourself accountable to those checkpoints day in and day out. Did they do this? How well did they do it? And if you can stay up on that for like 3 weeks, like it just becomes a new habit and that momentum is there. And every time you bring a new guy in, you can put them through that exact same onboarding. Once you have that out of your head and into a document, it's not like you're trying to remember, how did I do that with Jim? Jim turned out really well. I must have just been having a really good month, you know, like but Bob over here, I just can't figure out what's going on. You know, maybe it's his personality, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And it's like, well, maybe it's because, you know, he started on a Wednesday or he started on a Friday, right? And then had all weekend to forget everything. And then Monday you were too busy. And so he didn't actually get anything quality until like week 2 or 2.5 weeks in. And by that time you thought he should be sufficient already. So you just kind of took your foot off the gas and didn't do it at all the same way you did with Jim. And so it just, yeah.
I mean, that's a really good point that, you know, you get guys that are producing really well, you know, maybe it's a project manager, a project lead, or, you know, insert X, you know, here, if you're a junk removal company, maybe it's a, you know, really solid junk truck driver or like guys that are loading or whatever your business is, but you have a really good, really solid team member that's doing an excellent job and somebody else that's in that same role and they're not quite meeting those same expectations. And you have to diagnose, all right, is this a person that's just not right for the role? Or were they given all the same resources, all the same time that your star employee that's doing really well was also given? What is it, you know, what did that process look like? Or was it just the expectation that they were going to start to learn through osmosis, but they were never properly onboarded? They were never properly given the same kind of time or training that, you know, person A, your rock star had. And then you know, it's this question of, all right, is it a person problem or is it a process problem? And how do you kind of differentiate the two? What would you go back and take a look at, and what sort of conversations are you going through your mind at this point?
Yeah. Well, first I'll say, and you'll hopefully you'll recognize this too, and I'll phrase it as a question. How often have you heard or seen somebody that they hire somebody new and then they just throw them in the field and they're like, go figure it out. You're you're a smart guy. You've got experience. Go figure it out. I'll see how you do.
That was me, man. That was my that was my whole apprenticeship. That was how I learned. It was like I didn't have any real training, anybody formal. It was like, go just be next to him, do what he says, do what he does, and think 2 steps ahead. You're like, I don't even know what I'm thinking about. What am I supposed to be thinking about? Like, I don't, but I'm here and I'm like, all right, I'm pushing. I'm trying not to ask too many questions. I'm a little scared, a little nervous. Like to answer your question, that was my whole experience as an apprentice.
And so like our generation, that's normal. That was normal for us. So we just normalize it and that's how we kind of want things to go. And today with the speed that things move with technology and the way that people's minds work now, it can still work that way. And sometimes it does, but it's not something that's repeatable and scalable. And if you want to have a decent small business where, you know, you have a good crew and you make some good money, like that's one way to do it. But to scale, it's got to be repeatable, right? And so anytime I look at that, it's 90+% of the time, it's going to be a process problem, right? Did they have the tools and the training to do it right? Did I equip them to do it the way that it needed to be done? And most of the time when there's an issue, one of those 2 things is going to come up. They either didn't have the right training or I didn't give them the right tools. And that's why it happened. Or there wasn't a process in place whatsoever. If those things are in place and then you still have a problem, like, okay, then let's talk. There's something going on here that you're either intentionally doing something, or you're incompetent, or you're lazy, or something's happening. But it's such a small percentage of it.
Let's talk about getting thrown back into that snake pit conversation here. Like, do you in that was sort of the expectation. Like, I was warned about that when I was getting into construction and into the industry. It was like, this is how you learn. So I walked into that thinking that this is what I was, expecting. So I wasn't caught too off guard.
Yeah.
It was a new environment for sure, but I kind of knew, like, I'd been prepped by another friend that was in construction. He's like, man, just like show up, keep your head down, work, like just do your thing.
Yeah.
Just like show up on time. And that got me pretty far down the road. Yeah, it went a long way because a lot of people just, they didn't show up on time, and they didn't show up, on a Monday because, they were drinking all weekend, and they left early on Fridays, and they always had issues. And, sometimes they'd show up just before their paycheck and whatever. But I was like, all right, this is just the culture. Are you seeing like this is the expectation of new people that are coming into the trades? I mean, we're talking about meeting so many more people, getting them interested in trades and home service-based businesses, as we move into the future. Certainly in our industry, like I'm talking to a lot of high schools and colleges about, how all of the opportunities that the trades were able to bring myself and the team that we have. And I'm really encouraging them to look into that. But I think there's still a bit of a stigma about it that, we're not going to get a lot of oversight. It's not necessarily a profession. It's sort of, somewhere that we might go as a plan B if we don't make it into college. But is there, with the new staff that are coming in, or new, young, hungry, tradespeople that you're hearing about that are coming into companies, do they kind of have that expectation, or are they expecting, like, when we walk in here, like, this is going to be like, you better have your shit together. You better have a good onboarding plan. You better, you better understand technology because we do. And if they walk in somewhere, are they expecting to, that everything is going to be dialed, or what do you think is running through their head when they're first jumping into a new trade, or jumping on working with a new company?
And you're referring to the one coming in to work, right? Not the business themselves.
Yeah, not the business themselves. We'll get into that, but the one that's coming in to like join the company, the one that's like fresh out of high school, or making, maybe making a career change, is interested in getting into getting a trade. What do you think is running through their head as far as a minimum expectation of what they're walking into?
I mean, I think most of what I've seen anyway, and from what I've heard, is that the ones walking in are expecting that it's a small business that can get them by for a little while. They don't need much right now for the next couple of years. This is a good gap filler until they figure out where they want to go and what they want to do. And if it goes farther than that, great. And maybe I'll stick around. Maybe there's more opportunity. But I don't think most of them aren't coming in with a certainty that there's opportunity for them to work to whatever level they desire to get to. But I also, on the flip side, and I'll hold this until we're going to talk about like on my business side as well, but the ones coming into work also depends on their background, right? So we get all of it. Like, if kids come in that have grown up on a farm, like I did, like they are expecting a little more of what we are actually doing. Right? They've kind of seen it a little more from the inside. Or if they have family that has worked in the trades of something, could be any sheet metal, electric, plumbing, any of it. They could come into landscaping with us, or go into, framing, or any of that. And they have some family that's been in the trades. So they have heard either their dad or their uncle or their cousin or their mom or somebody that's done something. And so they're just kind of used to it. So they kind of know what to expect. But there's a big portion of them that they grew up in the suburbs and dad never even fixed anything himself. And they would call a handyman every time something went wrong. And so their process is, that's broke, call somebody. And I mean, I've had kids come work for us that they'd never used a drill. I say, hey, can you grab this, do that? We were just putting some up at the shop. This one that sticks in my head. And I said, hey, will you grab the impact driver for me? And he's like, what's that? The drill. But, yeah, just grab that. he came over with 2 drills, and I was like, this one, like, have you ever used one of these? No. I said, like, have you ever done this, any of this? No. Oh, and that's when it hit me. I took for granted all the things I learned on the farm because we built it, barns, barbed wire fence,
Yeah.
thing, ran the cattle, like everything. And he just grew up in the suburbs, riding his bike around the town and going to school, and he just never had the opportunity. So,
Yeah.
that kind of pulls at my heartstrings a little bit when I see that. And it's like, okay, we have the opportunity to step in as the leaders to actually train these kids and equip them. I say kids, but whatever, could be a same age as you. It's just nobody's ever taught them how to do that. So you could equip them with a skill that changed their life. And I think if we start doing that, then it will get seen as a more professional setting with opportunities, and it's getting there for sure. It's on the upswing.
I
So,
think what you said was pretty powerful about the, the expectation is that they're coming into a small company and it's going to be good for a while, but it's not necessarily going to be a career. When
yeah,
anybody new comes into our company, I want to blow their socks off. I want them to be like, "Hey, this is not
yeah,
what I was expecting. This exceeds. I wasn't expecting this kind of onboarding. I wasn't expecting this kind of training. I wasn't expecting this level of integration." I can now see myself, you know, spending way more time here than I actually thought because this is
yeah,
actually a pretty professional outfit. This isn't just, throwing me back into that snake pit. This is actually these guys are taking their time. They care about me. They want to build their career.
yeah.
What in your opinion to like really change that difference to or make that difference to change that mindset of those kids that are walking in through the door for the first time or somebody new that's walking into a company for their first day, first week? How do you go about what are the crucial things to make sure that their first week on the job, their first month on the job is just dialed and it is exceptional and they are going to be set up for success?
Yeah, and I'll answer this first by saying I'm always trying to improve this because this is such an important area, and it's easy to, when you're rushed, to think, well, let's just give them a cool hat and a hoodie and they'll feel like they're part of the team, right? Let's just give them a cool little package that they're onboarding on day one. And if you get really fancy with it, maybe you got like a Yeti for them and there's a balloon right there and it has their name on a piece of paper that's like, hey, here's your welcome package. That's not, that's cool. And if you have the resources to do that, like more than, more power to you, go do it. But the thing that I've seen that really makes the impact is starts way back at the interview and painting a picture for them
Right.
of what to expect and then delivering what you said you were going to deliver. Right. So if you're interviewing them and you get to that point where you want to start painting that picture, this is what it looks like to be a part of our team. And when you get here, here's what your first week is going to look like. I mean, it should be no different than if you're onboarding a new client. They get welcome emails, they get put through a whole process. You've got an automated thing that goes out and gives them reminders and all these things. You put all these resources into this new client because and because they're paying you. Well, they can't pay you if you don't deliver. And the guy that's delivering is the guy you're hiring, right? And so put the same effort into that. You hear that you have two funnels. You have the sales funnel and the recruiting funnel. So just paint the same thing you do with your customer journey. Do that with your team journey. Parallel it. Do the same thing. Same hospitality. Same everything you would put into a client. So paint the picture. This is what it would look like to be on our team. Deliver it the way you said it would look, and actually pay attention and care and set expectations and hold them accountable. It sounds
Man,
super simple, but
yeah,
it's
I mean,
the
yeah.
hardest thing I've ever done.
One of the things that I've been, doing a number of interviews lately, one of the conversations that has come up, that the questions that they've had for me, one of the that never used to come up is, what does my training look like? What kind of training do you offer? And I was like, the first time I had that question pop up, I was like, it never really hit me that I also now need to work. If I want somebody great, I need to work hard for them to make sure that they're having a good experience. I just always thought,
Yeah.
my younger age was like, well, you're going to come on work for me. So you're going to, you gotta prove yourself if you want to work here. I think there's an aspect to that too, but a lot of people with, especially when we are trying to get, like when I'm talking to high school kids, for example, I'm trying to get them excited about the idea of getting into a trade. They want to know what that opportunity looks like for them. They want to know what sort of training is at their fingertips. They want to know the kind of person that they can be once they get through with their apprenticeship. They want to know what kind of opportunities this career can provide for them. They did, they're not really interested in just some quick money, because it pays a bit more than working at the fast food joint down the road.
Right.
They want to know what that looks like, and even when I'm especially when I'm looking at hiring, you know, high level, we'll call them high level, but highly educated or highly experienced staff into leadership positions or into management positions. They always have that question. And I know now I come with that answer loaded. And I can't wait for them to ask me, because I can't wait to tell them what their experience is going to be when they first join the company and what that's going to look like. I always hold back a little bit because I always do want to over deliver, but it's certainly
Yeah.
something that over the past 16 years I've had to get better and better at, and us as a team have had to continue to get better and better at, and continue to communicate with each other about what that looks like.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of that, this younger generation as well, is it isn't about the money for them necessarily. Like there's a lot more purpose driven fulfillment in what they're doing, and they need the money to pay the bills, but and they want a certain lifestyle that they may be used to. Right. But, it's hard. I think that's why there's so much, career hopping, is because they just aren't getting fulfilled. There's no purpose in what they're doing. And that's a leadership issue. I say all the time that we don't have a labor shortage. We have a leadership shortage. There's just not. You'll look down the street. You'll have one company that's just having trouble and just struggling and frustrated, and they can't figure it out, and they're really beat up because they can't find good help. And then you look down the street and everybody's complaining, well, that guy down there is paying twice as much as everybody and giving all these benefits. I don't know how he does it, but everybody's leaving to go work there. And it's like, well, there's a common denominator here. Like, people want to follow that guy, right? It might be about the money, but they wouldn't stay just for the money necessarily, right? Not that many people. When you see a thriving company that's just growing and not uncontrollably, but just really thriving, generally there's somebody at the head of it that is a fantastic leader that's casting a great vision and caring for the people and equipping them and training them, and like there's the answer, right?
Can anybody be a leader?
I think so. I was a
Yeah.
selfish, like, get out of the way, like, get out of the way, just let me do it. I can do it faster, I can do it better for way too long. I'd hate to admit. I wouldn't have called myself a good leader at all. And today I'm still very much working on it, right? I don't put myself in the top whatever of any of it. But I think that's the key, is just continuing to work at it and work on yourself, and bring people along with you as you grow.
In your mind, what are the traits of a great leader? Maybe embodying some of the great leaders that you've had opportunities to work with or work
Yeah.
under in your career as you're coming up. What are some of the great things that you've been able to see and identify as exceptional traits of exceptional leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I have two people in my head that I'm picturing right now, and that were amazing leaders and or mentors to me along the way. Patience, humility, and I don't have the right word in my head right now other than like firm, um, unwavering. Like when it came to holding to your word, like they held me accountable, right? They were patient and they had grace, and they were humble and they didn't act, all haughty on me and doing that. But when we made an agreement, like, this was the agreement, and there wasn't a lot of flex to it. There was patience on it, and they weren't, ugly about it, but they were very firm. We made an agreement. This is the agreement. If you broke it, then that's, you're not going to get what we talked about. So,
Accountability.
yep.
I think that's it's something that a lot of leaders, I think, a lot of people in general, they stray away from because it's difficult conversations. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to, you know, destroy the peace, let's say.
Yeah.
But what you said is so common, and I hear that so many times about traits when they're thinking about leaders. The best people that they've worked for are people that have been able to hold them accountable, because I think everybody to some level wants to be held accountable. Any sort of high performer that has any sort of growth, they want to be held to a potential or an expectation of that somebody has of them, and they want to be able to live up to that. And they
Yeah.
need some boundaries, and they need guidelines, and they need somebody to tell them you're out of line, or, "Hey, on the other direction, you're doing really, really well, and this is why.
Yeah.
Keep it up."
Yep.
100%, man. I think, accountability is, uh, is huge. Certainly the best coaches that I have ever worked with are the ones, and especially the ones that I have seen the highest results and the best results myself from, are the ones that kept me the most accountable to what I said I was gonna do and the
Yeah.
commitments that I was making to them. 100%. There's a reason, my fitness coach, there's a reason why it's required that I send him, half naked photos, every single week, right? Monday morning, those photos are due. If I
Yeah.
don't get those in, I'm gonna get a message, "Hey, man,
Where's
where
your
are your
photos?
photos?"
Yep.
Checking in. I'm like, "All right, I'm not gonna send in photos that look worse than the week before. Like, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna make sure I'm doing the thing and make sure that I'm getting those photos in if I wanna see the results. And do I wanna see the results? Yes. Otherwise, I'm gonna just default to, "Oh, no, he wasn't a great fitness coach." It was somebody else's problem, it wasn't my problem. It's like, was
Yeah.
I really following the process? And
Right.
having somebody that keeps you accountable it's gonna just pull a ton more potential out of you than you ever expected, and I couldn't
Yeah.
agree more with what you're saying.
Cool.
Let me ask you, as we get into 2026, right? We're almost there. Christmas holidays are just around the corner. We're thinking
Mm.
about 2026. All these like New Year's resolutions, who these people are that we want to be, the leaders that we want to become, the things that we know we're going to say yes to, the things that we know that we're going to say no to. But as a business owner that might be leaning in on the hook right now as they go into 2026 and they want to make this their best year ever, what would you tell them? Where do they start? How would you advise them to move forward so that unwaveringly and undoubtedly they're going to have the best year they've ever had?
Uh, Learn to delegate. Learn to let go. Buy back your time. We all know that, right? But it's a skill set that is, especially in the trades, because of the personality types that it takes to be in a strong trade leader, personality. It seems to be one of the biggest struggles to let go and realize that letting go doesn't mean you lose control. Build a system around your delegation, that's our accelerator. That's like, this is, you get it out of your head and into your people so that you're all on the same thought process. You're not making clones. You're just delegating with a structure, right? And once you can do that, that's when you can actually start. We hear that all the time too. Work on the business, not in the business. Um, you just have to have a plan and a structure around what that looks like. But that was the number one thing for me, to stop doing the stupid stuff. And it's not stupid. It's just the tasks that were not right for me to be doing, so that I could stay focused on the tasks that only I could do at the highest level.
Yeah. Okay. That was going to be one of my last questions for you, but
Uh-oh.
not knowing the answer that you were going to give, I do have a couple more because it's super relevant. I just
Yeah.
had a gentleman in my office last night. I was here working late, and he was doing something in the building here that our office is in, and he stopped by and we had a conversation, and we are talking about just that. right? And he's got himself and his business partner, maybe a helper at this point, and he wants to grow his business. But that's one of the things
Yeah.
that he has struggled with is giving up delegation, right? And one of the comments that he made to me is like, how did you do it? Because this is your baby, right? Like this is your company. Like, nobody's going to care as much about your business as you do. Um, and nobody's going to do anything like the same way that you're doing it. So like, how did you find people that are working for you? Like I have a really tough time giving up that control. And I told him a story. I said, look, I don't believe that that's true. I don't believe that the people that work on your team, the people that work in your company, that they don't care less about the business than you do. Maybe some of them for sure, but a lot of them, especially the ones that are in leadership positions, the ones that are pushing things forward, they, believe it or not, they show up and they take pride that and they operate like an owner. They operate like a partner. And I was having a conversation with one of our senior managers the other day, and he had said something to me when we're doing some of our strategic planning. He's like, "Man, I'm thinking generationally for this business. Like, I'm thinking, how is my son going to come and one day, his son's I think 11 now. What does this future look like for my son if he was going to come in and work to this business and come in and get his apprenticeship and start getting going in construction?" And team members, if they buy into the business because you're doing a great job, you're working all towards something, a mission that you can all create together. They know where they fit into that. They know where their zone of genius is. Like, man, you will have people that want to work for your company, and they want to work with great people, with great team members, with great clients in a great community, and you can have that. And I tried to explain that to him, and he was saying, "Yeah, well, my trouble is like I can't give up. I can't give up control. I have this feeling that like I work with a guy for a couple of days, and I see his work ethic, and I feel like he's not doing things the way that I would do it, and I have a lot of trouble giving that up." For somebody that, given your advice here for 2026, saying learn to delegate, for somebody that isn't great at delegating, or they have this fear that they're giving up something that only they can do, what would the advice be that you would give them to delegate with confidence? How do they build that confidence in delegating and knowing that those balls aren't going to get dropped?
Yeah. Um, I think most, especially, I always say, especially in the trades, it's everywhere. Um, I think too many owners delegate the delivery too fast, right? And that's when we think delegate, they think, okay, well, I need to hire a technician to do the work so that I can work on the business. And it's like, maybe not, right? Like, who's running the office? What are all the office and admin and back end tasks that you are absolutely horrible at, that you should not be doing, and that are not the thing that you are trained to do? Maybe you should stay in the field a little longer and hire or outsource some of those things. Delegation doesn't mean you hired somebody onto your like full-time team. Delegation can be outsourced. It could be a CPA or a bookkeeper or an executive assistant or a marketing company or any of those things. Any of that stuff you're doing, delegate that stuff first, especially if you're a great technician that started a business and now you've got people and you're like, oh crap, what do I do now? This thing grew more than I thought it would, and this is kind of fun, and I want it to keep going. But you really like your craft. Well, if you're worried about not being able to, you don't have enough time to train your new guys, your technicians, to be good as you are, well, then take everything else off your plate first. And you be the lead technician that trains everybody, but you don't answer the phone, you don't do the emails, you don't do all of this stuff. And sometimes that's hard to do because that seems like the white collar stuff that I want to be doing as a business owner. You'll get there, right? And you'll get there faster if you make sure that the product that's delivered is what you were delivering. And that's where the headaches usually pop in. So I would delegate the stuff that you shouldn't be doing.
Love that answer. So true. David, man, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you
Yeah.
if they want to connect?
Easiest is Instagram, official David Forster. Not because I'm a big deal, but because there's a lot of David Forsters around, I guess. So,
You the official one. You the
I'm the
official
official
one.
David Forster on Instagram, and systemsoversweat.com is the website. And yeah, give me a shout, shoot me a DM. We'll have some good conversation.
Man, thank you so much for being here, man. I really, really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And to all our listeners out there that are still with us, as always, rooting for you to win. Have a great day. Stay blessed. Rock and roll. Peace.